Hello, my name is Paul Mooney and I'm the founder of Cohesion, and I'm here in this video for about 9 or 10 minutes to tell you that cohesion is not for everyone, because there are some people, leaders that we have found, who want to change others and who themselves are resistant to change. So since I began my own business in 1999, liquidating my own technology company that was valued at over 100 million rand by 3 simultaneous betrayals by business partners, that required me to rehabilitate myself through my own nervous breakdown in 2006 in Dublin, and I've undertaken about a dozen qualifications since then, including 2 doctoral studies. In all that time, I have come to the realization that there are side effects to the work that I now call cohesion, and these side effects include the phenomenon that 1 in 8 people who engage in a cohesion process will leave the business that pays for it. And it appears to me that leaders who do open their hearts and minds to dialogue, which is the approach that we use, become more critical of the inauthenticity that they discover in themselves and which they witness in others, in the heat and in the depth of a safe cohesion circle, and especially the incoherence that they witness among their leaders. I've also seen that leaders who take responsibility for their own development rather than handing that over to a faculty in a business school, they discover in themselves, I suppose you would call it a selfishness, because they apply selfish principles to themselves because they are no longer willing to be abused by systems warlords or by commercial bullies within the organization. Interestingly, somebody who goes through the cohesion process has an increase in the intensity of their bullshit radar, because it magnifies to such a high degree where they find that they're able no longer to countenance any abusive or harmful behaviour that they might once have allowed happen, or as we often see, they allow it to roll off themselves like water off a duck's back. But once a leader does go into a cohesion leader maturity process, they realise that they are, or they have been living in or contributing to, a fragmented system. At the very least, they know deep down that when they do their daily reports in their Excel spreadsheets and their Microsoft Word documents, that their organization is at least operating suboptimally than its potential. So the leaders that stay with the cohesion process, and so far in the last 16 years, that's kind of 1 in 4, meaning that 3 in 4 guys they don't stay with this process. It's not for them. They realize that they're either part of the problem or that they collude with somebody who is part of the problem. But in choosing to change through dialogue and cohesion, leaders choose to convert fragmentation to cohesion, and they choose to convert dysfunction into value, because they grow people and they grow systems at the same time. In fact, we've discovered that GP, which can stand for gross profit, can also stand for growing people. And I suppose the paradox of the dialogic approach is that cohesive leaders can actually extend their command and control into a system that welcomes their new style of leadership, because they become a more coherent visionary and they become a better strategic executor of value. I think that's the way we would describe it. So the direct reports of the cohesive leader, the people that report directly in, they become more resilient, they mature into a coherent, bonded collective. And further down the system, the term we use for that now is the lower hierarchy, staff that report into managers, they begin to co-labor in circles of trust, they develop common understandings, and they develop new meanings by dialoguing instead of arguing. So instead of problem solving, they problem find, and they more easily transform issues into opportunities. And all this is based around value creation, because they become an action learning culture which continuously self-learns and self-evolves. Leaders develop their own customized and unique ways of creating value, and in this way they actually lead their managers and staff through, I suppose, dialogue dialogue and cohesion processes. And as they learn how to more accurately convert human energy into economic output, we see less waste and less harm, and each system transforms in its own particular way with a very simple and integrated process which we call the cohesion process. And that happens horizontally across the hierarchy and vertically into the lower hierarchy. Cohesion dialogue has the effect of dissolving dysfunction between silos, as well as dissolving the negative tension that happens among competing executives. Essentially, a cohesive leader chooses to transform from being a personal leader into being somebody who leads a leadership collective or a collective leadership community. So the cohesion process converts organizational politics into organizational profit, and it changes presenteeism, which is turning up every day, looking like you're busy, but you're not actually contributing anything to the value chain, turns that into organizational value. And we in the cohesion community of business have noticed that for every 10% shift in energy that's recorded in the cohesion dashboard, that there is a 6% economic shift in the system. So that could be at sales, it could be at cost of sales, it could be at fixed assets, it could be at working capital levels. But what we do see again and again is that being a cohesive and a mature leader has the effect of maturing the executive team, making groups more cohesive because they use data to drive decisions, and decisions feed back into dialogue circles. The dialogue circles defragment the system, which creates more data, which creates more dialogue. So you can see that virtuous loop. It's almost like a biofeedback system because it's a continuous listener on the dashboard. So this defragmentation happens naturally and without a single change management rollout. That's big, eh? That's big. So once the leader is more coherent, their vision becomes more strategic and executable. This means that business happens not as usual in the theatre of endless back-to-back meetings, but in the active and in the dynamic circles of trust that dialogue and problem find as a collective. However, we have found that where leaders insist that personal issues can't be discussed at work, or where there's no time or space for listening, that it's unlikely to become a dialogic system. Equally, where leaders believe and think thoughts that staff ought to do what they're told, or they're not to think for themselves, while at the same time leaders deceive themselves that the command and control system is working perfectly, there's very little space for a cohesion or a dialogic process in a system like that. Now, the thing is that millennials and more conscious staff know that the rules of the game are changing. The gig economy is shifting work patterns, and digital transformation is taking away work that we once considered to be permanent and pensionable. But that leaves a huge opportunity for work that robots and IT systems simply cannot perform, and that is the process about thinking, about the quality of our thinking, and for us that can only happen in circles. So, where leaders have no space for issues of the heart or the soul to be discussed at the workplace, maybe the place is soulless, and after a while the good souls leave, leaving behind what Harari calls in his book Homo Sapiens, niches for imbeciles. So, if you as a leader blame everybody except yourself, or if your boss continuously suggests that the issue is somebody else's fault, then the leaders in that system may consider themselves smarter than everybody else. And if they truly believe there's nothing to learn from the staff, from the experts, from the clients or the partners, in truth and in evidence, systems like this are dying every day in every country on this planet. If leaders think that arrogance is more important than learning, and it appears to me that dialogue has no place in the system and cohesion is quite unlikely to work in that system. So for the first time in many years, it's been my great pleasure to turn down work in systems like that for leaders like that, because we would all be wasting our time and our money. However, if leaders are willing to willingly be authentic with their colleagues, if they accept their own stupidity as part of a collective stupidity that's created by the system, and if they know that deep down that they're the ones that need change, well then perhaps cohesion and dialogue can accelerate the journey, and that's all cohesion does. If leaders believe that their own limited intelligence is part of a larger collective, where psychological safety is the primary concern, and collective leadership, dialogue and value creation are simply a circle away. Look, all personal development, group development and organizational development work is hard. Why is it hard? Because it chips away at the ego, it chips away at the history, at the baggage, at the wounds, at the feuds, and at even the identity. But if leaders and staff alike want to make choices instead of having choices forced on them, if they want to be more disciplined and self-focused through clarity and high-quality listening, well then this can take place in service to others, and it can expand critical thinking, it can expand innovation, decision making becomes more accurate, and there's a continuous value add in the system, both for the people and for the economics. The emotional gold that we have seen discovered through cohesion includes higher awareness. People find their hidden strengths. There's more accurate sensing of whether somebody's a friend or a foe. And there's a very important containment of negative emotions. There's a positive seeking of meaningful relationships, and the system becomes a trusting alliance. Energetically, truth becomes the chosen tool of personal integrity. Presence and empowering others becomes natural and autonomic. On top of that, we see shared connections, humane activity and bonded value creation becoming the norm. I suppose what we're also seeing is high sustainable growth and high employee as well as high leadership engagement, and this becomes the culture. What we're seeing is that problems that were politics, eroding profit, disengaged staff, high volume of noise and waste in the system, lack of synergy between silos and inadvertent harm that once created feuds and baggage, this all transforms to create the space for meetings to become circles, for ego to be replaced by maturity, for silos to become containers. And when that happens, dialogue replaces conversation and even replaces communication, because dialogue is much deeper than communication. And most importantly, as I've said earlier, psychological safety becomes the norm instead of psychological harm. So when we are helping to guide leaders to create value with integrity, leaders adopt a philosophy which proposes that their thinking and that their emotional energy influences the overall health of the organization. And when they use processes such as cohesion and dashboards like the cohesion dashboard as the body and the soul of the organization, which articulates the actions where all the parts work together, respectful of each other's function, conscious about each other's contribution to the whole in harmony and in synchronicity, the whole system becomes a value optimizing system. So just wanted to tell you in these few minutes, cohesion is not for everyone. We're seeing, as I said, 3 in 4 people who start a cohesion process don't continue it because it's not for them. So if you're the 1 in 4, drop me a line. My name is Paul Mooney. My email address is paul@cohesion.global. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day.